Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started. All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have a special guest, Mani Alavi. Mani, how are you?
Good, man. Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year. And by the way, Dr. Mani Alavi. Sorry about that. I'm really good. How about you?
Good, man. How's your training going?
It's pretty good. Last year I was a little bit injured for the first of the year, first several months, and then I didn't really train after May for too much. And so it wasn't great, but I'm back on it and starting
Nice.
to get into a bunch of running groups. So I think I'm part of 3 or 4 of them. I like to spread it out lately. And we'll talk about all of that and how much you really enjoy this Dallas community. But
Yeah.
how about yours?
Good, man. Yeah, training's going well. Let's see. Just mostly training right now. Our Boston training block started right now, so we're all just jumping into that. And then I got into the Tokyo lottery this year, so I'm going to do that. I haven't decided if I want to race it or not. And then between then,
Congrats.
yeah, it'll be my 5th star, so that'll be cool. Yeah, man, thanks so much for having this show. First of all, good job on your show. Kudos to you. Thanks for the invite. Thank you for promoting DFW running. Again, like we were talking offline, I really think Dallas has the best running community. I know people in
It's a good one.
Austin, that's the mecca for endurance sports sometimes, and maybe places like Colorado and Utah and stuff. Man, but Dallas is a pretty special place, if you ask me.
Completely agree. And that's why I started this, is that how do we promote runners within the DFW area? I'm not saying that we might take some people in Houston and Austin and talk to some of those folks, because a lot of us runners go out to those races out there. But today I want to talk a little bit about your journey. Let's start from the beginning from a running standpoint. And you're a very accomplished person. You used to be an attorney. Now you're a doctor, all these kinds of things. We'll see how that plays into your running. But let's start off from the beginning. When did you start running?
When did I start running, man? If you ask my mom, like Forrest Gump, I just started running one day.
I was running.
No,
Yeah.
I ran pretty competitively when I was younger. I was like a 2 miler, and then I transitioned more into middle distances in my 20s and 30s. In law school, actually, I was really like focused on, I linked up with a group of folks. I was training for a specific endeavor, and that's what I got into. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. But then in my mid 30s, I had a pretty bad injury that set me back a few years. And then
Oh,
I've
man.
had kind of a 7-year comeback. And yeah, man, that's my
Wait back. So you said a lot of things in there without saying a lot of things.
yeah.
So high school, you ran the 2 mile. So that was in track. Did you run the
Yeah,
mile?
that
Mile
was
kind of
my
thing?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I played every sport, but the thing that I excelled at the most was probably the short distances. Truthfully, I wanted to be Deion Sanders. I played defensive back, and
Played football.
I did track. I had the gold chains and everything to prove it. Unfortunately, I did not have the talent of prime time.
Yeah. That guy's still
Yeah.
a very talented coach now.
Yeah, oh man, yeah. He definitely is talented on many levels. But yeah, man, those were the prime time days. Yeah, I was a pretty arrogant little guy. And then I again transitioned to, I think what happens is as you get older, you transition to longer distances. For some
Understood.
people, your aerobic capacity just is immense. So you can just keep developing those things. And yeah, man, that's my running. Running has just always been a big part of my life. It's just been something that I think I would argue, and a lot of people would argue, this is what we do as a species. We are physically active creatures who are just extremely adept at running, and especially long distances. So,
I agree.
uh,
I think that if I look back, and one of the things that I said I'm almost 50. So when I was 36, 37, I started running. And in the beginning, it was more about losing weight. And I think I lost 25 pounds
nice.
just pretty quickly. And it wasn't just losing weight, it was just trying to get more healthy.
Hmm.
Through running, it really helped me to eat a little bit better and be smarter about all that kind of stuff. That took some time, but also it was, hey, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
I was starting hitting PRs of half marathons, doing marathons and that kind of stuff. And then it was motivating. Then it became a lifestyle. And here I am 50, I haven't really stopped training. I've at least done 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, depends on the year. I've certainly kept somewhat consistent.
That's
And
awesome.
that kind of sounds like where you're at. The reason I brought that up is because, look, no matter how old you get, and especially when you start hitting your 40s, you start seeing a lot of men and women starting to do more of that running. And you're starting to see it blow up even more over the last 7 or 8 years. And I really love it. You're seeing it in Boston and bringing down the times because there's so many people trying to get it and they're
Yeah.
starting to get in and things like that. And we'll talk about that in a minute for you, but You've had quite the journey. So you mentioned that you did high school, a bunch of different things, but then you transitioned in your 20s to running. Is that right?
No, I ran
Like longer?
yeah, longer distance. So I would do middle distances. In my
Okay.
20s, I was in law school. I was actually training to be a kind of a, as an aside, I was training to be a JAG officer. And the folks that I was like linked up with at the time, man, they were just so intense. And I personally, I'm a pretty social runner. I like
Yeah.
linking up with a good sort of foundation, good people. And man, once I get dialed in with a group, I can definitely just excel. And so I got so fit in law school, and middle distances was my thing. I loved just racing
So
like
like the
10K,
5K or 10?
10K,
Okay.
10K and half marathons.
Okay.
But yeah, those are my thing. But just honestly, you're just doing PT basically, and you're just working so hard to just become just this well-rounded athlete. And I think that really helped me in a lot of ways. And then we can talk a little bit more about how I got into sort of longer distances like marathons and so forth. But my first experiences with the marathon was not very good at all. I think
Yeah. Tell me
we
about that. When did you
uh,
run your first marathon? Where was it? And tell me about the experience.
Yeah, back then, again, I came from a reasonably good running background. I could run like a sub 35, 10K. I could sub
Wow.
17, 5K. Again,
Impressive.
what,
Pretty good
so
athlete.
honestly, I think certainly not Olympic level or anything like that, but just reasonably pretty good. So what happened perfectly, to be honest, is I was trying to impress a girl. I had a crush on this young, cute little girl, and I thought the best way to link up with her was if we trained for a marathon. So we were in college then. I said, hey, why don't we train for this Austin Marathon together? And Austin Marathon, a pretty hard
That's the hilly
course.
one, right? Yeah.
Is a hilly course. Yeah. So here's my logic, Chris. So please don't laugh at me too much. I had a
It's a
couple
girl.
goals.
Hey, say no more.
Yeah. So it was a girl. My strategy was if I spend time with her, she might like me. Number two was I wanted to do a marathon. Like I was going to do one marathon, be done with it. And I had a training buddy, and me and him would go and run like 7 to 10 miles as fast as we could. So much of the training and the science behind running was not really known back then. The 80-20 running, everyone has the knowledge now. If you just go and Google what is the appropriate way of running, you'll probably get like 90% of it, right? But we thought,
And by the
hey,
way, Monty, you don't need Google anymore. You have Claude or ChatGPT, and it just tells
exactly.
you.
Yeah,
Anyways,
exactly. Yeah.
we're past Google now.
Yeah, or yes, I'm sorry. I'm dating myself. I
I'm
remember the
just
good old
teasing.
days when we had Google. So that was my goal. I wanted to run a marathon. My goal was 2:45, and me and my buddy, I'm going to leave his name out of it. So we were like, hey, we can run like a 10K in 35 minutes if we just bring that down a little bit. So if you do the math, if you run like a 39-minute 10K multiple times, you finish a marathon in about 2:45, right? So
Sounds reasonable for your
yeah.
first.
And then the young lady that I had my eyes on, she and her friend actually followed a training plan, believe it
Yeah.
or not. Yeah, so they followed a training plan. They would do long runs. We were too cool for that. So marathon day comes by, and it's a warm day, but that's not the point.
It's part of the point.
That's part of the
Sure.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember what happened. So the start line, I'm starting at the front with the cool kids. Me and my buddy were going to do 39-minute 10Ks.
Yeah.
Just boom, and then we'll be done. And I was telling her, hey, I'll wait for you at the finish line, et cetera, et cetera. So we start. We'll call my friend John. I won't tell you his last name. We fly through the first 10K. I remember looking down my watch going, wow, that was a 38-minute 10K. I'm like, we could probably speed
That's
it up
pretty
a
good,
little
yeah.
bit, man. I
Oh,
think
man.
maybe we can even do 2:42 that day. And anyway,
And you're just in the first 10K.
just honestly, like my wife has a funnier version of the story, but so about 7-8 miles into this thing, and I don't think we had done a run longer than 10 miles. I just feel like I'm going to die. My buddy, I think in an intelligent way, fakes a hamstring injury and he's out. And once he drops out, just my whole like morale and everything is gone. So now
And you're like 10 miles into it, you said, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. If it was a Strava post, it would be so funny. It would be like 6:10, 6:10, 6:10, 6:10. Boom, like you just fall apart. So I don't know, about 2 hours into the race, I'm definitely walking at this point. I'm limping. I went to the aid station for about 25 minutes. I kid you not. Because I remember there was a nice group of people. Hey, do you want to drop? I'm like, I really want this medal. And then I'm walking, and then I see her and her friend just pass me. And I'm like, there goes there goes that relationship. And then I remember, so I started with the fast kids, and I remember sometime about 5 hours into this race, someone told me, hey, there's a cutoff for this race, right? Because I was like talking to someone while we were limping along.
Do you even know what that was?
I don't know. It was like 6 hours or 8 hours.
No, I'm saying, did you even know what a cutoff was?
No, I mean, obviously, none of this was planned really well. So anyway, long story short, I finished at 5:23. The young lady that I was interested in, she finishes at 4 something. I thought she was never going to have anything to do with me again, but she actually brought me some soup later. And it actually, anyway, it turns out we have 2 kids together. We're married. I'm sure she has a different version of the story, but that's my version. And
next time, get her on and tell that story,
Yeah, basically, I blew up at 10 miles and then crawled to the finish, 5:23. She crushed her race. She's very proud of that. Yeah, it was. And then I'm like, I will never do another marathon again. So that
sounds like
was,
me.
I guess in the long run, it was the girl I was trying to impress. She was impressed enough to hang out with me for a little bit longer.
Impressed enough, and you've got a couple of kids together. Worked out.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Look, everybody has their story, and there's always especially when you first start trying to impress somebody, that's always going to probably lead to disaster, especially when you're cocky, and I'm sure you were humbled that day.
I mean, who knew no marathon was so long? Who knew? No one told me. Like, who knows? Just because you can run a fast 5K, you can't finish a marathon. But hey,
just like anything, it's a lot of people have this misconception that not that marathons are easy. They can go out, and especially if they're a talented runner like you, and just do it and not do all the training. So that's one. 2, a lot of people know that they're talented, and I've seen very talented people say, run their first marathon and say, hey, my goal is, and I've said this in other podcasts, is to run Boston and qualify for Boston. And my advice is, hey, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't set those high expectations and goals, and I think that's okay. But as one of my other guests said, have a plan B as well, a B goal. Because the reality is our bodies have got to get to know or have got to start feeling. And it could sometimes take years from a marathon standpoint to really get to where we really could hit our full potential. And that's my
for sure. Yeah.
thought. I'm still trying to hit my full potential in the half marathon and other races. And I'm almost 50. And I've been doing this for a long time. And you've been doing it even longer. And somebody even told me this once is, I see it as they get older, they say, my PR, I look at PRs in my 20s, PRs in my 30s and 40s and 50s. I no longer look at them as, hey, I want to beat my PR when I was 20 or 30. Got to be realistic when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the other thing I would say is sometimes sympathy and can be the best driving force of bringing people together. So I think she felt so sorry for me after that experience. So yeah. So honestly, it turned out so well for me in a lot of ways. I didn't do a marathon for many years later, but I definitely taught me a bunch of lessons. One, how to impress a girl.
That was one lesson, right? I'm not doing them again for a while.
And 2, I will say this, information is so readily available. We talked about Google and ChatGPT and so forth back then. So if you just ask any person, like it's very counterintuitive to think, hey, I'm going to run slow for most of the times, and then I'm going to do these specific workouts.
From a training standpoint.
Like if you just ask an intelligent human, hey, like you want to run 26.2 miles as fast as you can, what should you do? It's not counterintuitive to say, hey, I should run at that pace all the time, and I should basically just keep doing that, right? If you want to run a 3-hour marathon, it makes sense to just run a 6:52 pace all the time. But of course, that's not how we adapt, and that's not how we get stronger.
That's how we get injured.
Yeah, that's how we get injured. I didn't know any of that. But also, we didn't have super shoes back then, so maybe that was part of it. I would have done maybe a few minutes faster. Who knows?
Super shoes are fairly new as well. What, 5 or 6 years old now?
Yeah, I think I heard about them like 2018, 2019. Someone said, hey, check out these Vaporflies. I'm like, oh my goodness.
What's a Vaporfly?
It's like the first time I held the iPhone. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing will be ever the same.
And it hasn't been. They've changed everything.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've run your first marathon and you got really injured. Can you talk a little bit about before the injury and what you're doing and how you got injured and what it was, and it took you a long time to get over that?
Oh, yeah, my injury. Yeah, we could talk about that briefly. So actually, my injury happened about 11 years ago. And the reason I know that is, so when my daughter was born, she's turning 11. So again, I would run with people. I had a running system. Again, none of this was that great back then. I think we're all like learning more and more. I had a community. I would go and do miles. I don't think we had Strava back then. I can't remember, but I don't remember how we logged our miles. I think I just put it on different ways.
Yeah, I've had some stuff. Back then, Nike was big in the watch. And I don't know if you remember that, but...
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember I would log it on a notepad. But anyway, My daughter was born. I don't know. There's something I think when you have children, you just something hormonal, like you just don't want to leave the house. Seriously. So she was born. I stopped running with people. I stopped running outside. I bought this like cheap treadmill from Academy, like a $300 treadmill. And I'm trying to run like 60, 70 miles on this thing.
On the
Meanwhile, like
treadmill?
on a treadmill. Yeah, I just didn't want to leave the house for some
Yeah.
reason.
So,
And always leaving at incline 0, which is a bad idea. Don't ever do that. If you're running on a treadmill, try to vary it up a little bit. And then I remember one time I was trying to do these interval workouts on the treadmill. Meanwhile, I have a stressful job and there's other stresses, baby, lack of sleep, all of these things. I'm probably not eating well. I'm gaining a few pounds. And I just, boom, my knee I just feel like a pop. And I'm like, oh my
doing a
gosh.
run?
During an interval workout, like
Okay.
trying to do like these, I don't know, like 800 meters on the treadmill. 800 meters is a half a mile. So you can do that on a treadmill set on miles. And I just stopped the workout. So much effusion, just so much swelling in my knee. I'm like, okay, this is not good. And I followed I'm a doctor, so I know better. I know what to do. I don't need to go see an expert. I followed the Rice method. And Rice, you've heard of the Rice mnemonic, has been invalidated on so many levels. Not that Rice, and then I would let it calm down and come right back and it would get worse. And I basically just caused more damage.
Yeah.
What should have been probably a 3-week injury turned into almost a 2-year injury. Meanwhile, I lost so much fitness. I gained so much weight. I lost
How much weight did you gain?
I don't know, man. Probably 30 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 pounds. Yeah, I was.
And you probably started feeling a little bit depressed and down and out and things.
I felt awful. I also like almost gave up on the whole thing. So if anyone's listening to this, you have an injury, please do not give up.
You'll get through it, most likely.
You'll get through it. One, I would say my advice to you is, one, don't give up. Number two, seek like professionals. Like I'm an ER doctor. Like I can deal with emergencies, but I am not a physical therapist. I'm not, and I'm certainly not, I'm not, no, a person who should be treating myself. So go seek, professionals, whatever resources you want to find. And then for me, I think the thing that really helped me was this frame of reference, because I could have easily given up on the whole thing. I had a reasonably good running career at that point. No one's going to fault me for just doing what I'm supposed to do as a middle-aged American, right? And even then, I don't think I was like the most unfit person. If I walk into a room, no one's going, oh my gosh. So no one's ever going to point out, hey, Monty, you are a different version of yourself. But it was this frame of reference. I just remember like being fit, and now I remember now I'm like unfit. So there's a huge difference like in just your temperament and your mood and the way you process information. And not to go on a tangent here, but I think a lot of that I think having a good frame of reference comes down to being active when you're younger.
Yeah.
Most pediatric colleges recommend 60 minutes of physical activity for children, minimum. A majority of American kids don't get that. I just happened to be alive during a time where, being physically active was your form of entertainment, and I just really enjoyed it. So having that frame of reference. So I think when I tell my patients, hey, be more physically active, eat the right foods, etc., if they don't have that frame of reference, it's really hard to say, okay, what does this mean? But I think that's what really helped me. I could remember when I was fit, and then I could remember sitting on the couch and and I don't want to dig at the Cowboy fan, but watching the Cowboys game or whatever I'm supposed to be doing at middle age.
It's hard to do right now. It's a good point, because I think about when I was a kid, I was outside all the time. We were playing games like make-up games like Flashlight. It's in the dark, and we'd go hide. It's hide and seek, but if you flash at the light, then you're caught. So you're always running around trying to go from one place to another, and it was just always activity, always outside, playing tackle the man with the football or whatever. So it's just making stuff up.
Yeah.
And just going out there and doing that. And we didn't have the video games or the iPhones or nothing. We didn't have any of that. We had a TV that we had to watch channel 4, 8, 11, 33, 21, etc. And cartoons weren't on until Saturday morning, kind of thing. It's a changing world, and we're distracted by a lot of other things besides this physical activity. And you make a really good point, and I love how you did that. So, a couple questions, and we'll get into kind of this, I don't want to say medical, but more of this healthy kind of thinking. Your comeback is remarkable. When you think of what you've already accomplished, you've run some marathons under 3 hours now after the fact of gaining weight, stopping the injury, and that kind of stuff. What do you think is pushing you to do some of that? What made you just decide? Let's talk about what made you decide to start getting back active again. Was it that frame of reference you had, and what'd you start doing?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, it's your frame of reference. I think you're just a better version of yourself when you're fit and healthy. I don't want to sound like a judgmental person, but when you're not,
Yeah.
you're just a different version of yourself. You're a better, whatever metrics in life that matter to you, whether it's being a husband, a father, employee, whatever your passions are, the healthier you are, the fitter you are, the more, again, there's all these terms out there, but we are not destined to be obese and have high blood pressure and diabetes. There's a term for this, and we can talk about that. But basically, it's about the life you want to live and how you want to live that. And the creatures we are, we're humans. We were evolved to be physically active and eat human food, which is, no, it is low caloric, highly nutritious foods. And to your point, we are also designed to be connected. We are social pack animals. As you and I grew up in a time where we would get bored if we're inside the house, right?
Yep.
As a human, right, we're wired to consume calories, conserve energy, and not be bored, right? Let's just say those three things. We'll take reproduction of those things out of it. But if you put a human just in front of a wall, right, we call that solitary confinement. They may go insane after a while. That's torture. The Geneva Convention has rules against that, et cetera, et cetera. But you put a screen in front of them, they will never be bored. And so all that to be said is that there is a disconnect between some of the things that are around us right now and the way we're living. So as an organism. So I don't know if I answered your question, but mostly I would say you're going to be a better version of yourself. The healthier you are, the more fit you are. You're going to set a better example for your family, for your kids. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to be healthier and happier. For me, it was that frame of reference. And maybe I was just lucky to be alive during a time where you could live like that. It's a little bit more challenging perhaps for kids now. I don't know. There's all these great books out there like The Anxious Generation and some other ones where they talk about social media and screens and so forth and how a lot of that is leading to some issues for us. But I'm sorry, what was your question?
No, I think that was really good. I don't know that you completely answered it. You answered the why you got back into it. Can you describe what you started doing to really start
Oh man, it
being
was so
active again?
boring. So first of all, I had to fire myself as my provider. I went to physical therapy. Man, I love physical therapy.
Yeah.
I love physical therapy. So I went to physical therapy and then I would do these exercises. Man, it's so boring by yourself, doing these lunges and Bulgarian split squats and getting your tendons and muscles back strong. First, you got to be able to handle the load and then just gradual. Honestly, you just have to just basically approach the return like very slowly. I would do short walks, then runs, and combine it with strength training and mobility work. It also taught me a little bit about setbacks are very temporary. And
That's true.
And it was just, it was
Well,
less
like
about
you said,
returning to where I was, but more about just rediscovering the joy of movement, honestly.
and for you, the setback was a little longer because you were your own doctor.
Certainly, yeah. That was definitely,
We all do that, though. A doctor trying to be his own doctor, but then us not even doctors being our own doctors.
yeah, and then just not catastrophizing also the injury. Because I think you get an injury and you're like, oh my God, I will never be able to run again. That's not true. You can always make a comeback. And this,
Well, and it depends. Look, it does depend on the injury to how long it might be, but in general, I've seen most people think they were done with running. 3 years later, they go through all this rehab or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're out running again. I can name several people, and I think that the key really at the end of the day is exercise. Just get out there and walk, jog, cycle, swim, I don't know, whatever, and be consistent at it.
And it's a very emotional thing, I think, because a big part of my social life is also my running, even back then. And you're disconnected from your friends. And I remember I just didn't want anything to do with people like my friends who were running while I was injured because it was just a bad reminder that you have this FOMO, you're missing out. Nowadays might be even worse with like social media apps and Strava and so forth. Maybe get off of those and just focus on relearning how to move if you have a big injury. It depends on what the injury is, of course, and its timing. And then also tackling it early. Again, I probably did all the wrong things and I made this injury so much worse and it prolonged.
Give me two wrong things you think you did.
One, I think generally for like tendinopathies and tendons and so forth, tendons like to be loaded. They like to get stronger. They don't like to be inactive. I think what I would do is I would go from periods of complete inactivity to bring down the fusion, bring down the swelling to, hey, I'm going back to 60-mile, 70-mile weeks. That was the number one thing. Yeah, these cycles of inactivity. And two, I think, was not being patient enough and wanting to do too much too quickly. I think that pretty much was my fault. Not to mention all the other ways I was coping with the stress of not being able to run, something I've always been able to do. My body was so out of sorts. Like when you taper, like you're just feeling weird. I was just like a different version of myself. And I probably dealt with that by some lifestyle choices that probably prolonged the whole process, which is like gaining weight and so forth. Yeah, I think I'm pretty proud of myself for not giving up on the whole thing. Yeah,
I think
but
that, no, I think that's awesome. And coming back stronger than ever. It sounds like now you're doing longer distance and everything else. Thinking about that injury piece, a lot of people, and you're a faculty physician at UT Southwestern. So from your medical standpoint, when you think about misconceptions around running, bad for your knees, it's bad. Somebody say, see, you had a knee injury, that kind of stuff. What are some of those misconceptions, and are they true to some degree or not, and things like that?
it's so funny.
Curious.
I think the number one, like you said, is running will ruin your knees. Hands down, that is the most persistent myth out there. Many people believe that running will lead to, and I think when people say running is bad for your knees, I think what they're trying to say is that it'll lead to arthritis, osteoarthritis specifically, or some kind of analogy to the tires of a car and they're going to wear down. There's been a lot of studies published. If you look at arthritis care and research, it suggests that runners actually have lower rates of knee osteoarthritis compared to non-runners. Running strengthens the muscles around the knees, improves joint lubrication, maintains a healthy weight, all of which protect joint health. Osteoarthritis, a part of it is genetic. So some people would say, hey, the counterpoint to that is, hey, I knew a guy who ran a bunch of marathons and he had osteoarthritis. Part of that is genetic. Yes, that can happen, but you do decrease your chances by having a normal BMI, by moving that joint. Again, that's how our joints preserve themselves. Again, also people associate knee pain with running, especially when they first start up or ramp up too quickly, that there's some kind of structural issues with the knee. And that's usually not the case. The problem is not the running itself. It's usually either inadequate strength or doing too much too soon, or maybe even poor form. I would also add that
Do you think weight can have a big part
100%.
of
Yeah.
what's wrong with people's
BMI.
knees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
BMI is definitely.
BMI, yeah.
Yeah. And then I would also add that the other misconception, I think, is that running is only for the young or naturally athletic people. That's not true. Running can be adapted for any age or fitness level. Runners in the 70s and 80s achieving personal best. We've had Tommy Hughes on the show set 5 decades of sub 2:30 marathons. Yeah. So I think that's also another misconception. I would say I would just add 2 more things. One, you don't need perfect biomechanics to run. Like obviously ideal form helps. Most runners can improve their form with time, maybe with coaching and awareness. And then more miles does not always equal better fitness. Quality over quantity. Overtraining is a real issue. I'm guilty of that. So I would say the takeaway is your knees don't fear running. They fear inactivity. Your knees do not fear running. They fear inactivity. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and if you have to, start slow. And you should start slow.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started running, I would walk a mile every day for 5 days. And then one of my goals was on Friday, I want to be able to jog that entire mile without stopping.
Yeah.
Then over time, I'd bring that up. Now I made some mistakes. What you said is in the beginning was I was running 6 miles as fast as I could every day.
Yeah.
Just don't do that. But
which is not counterintuitive, right? Like you want to run fast, so why not run fast every single day? It turns out that's
it
not
made
how.
Sense.
Yeah, it turns out that's not the way to do it.
And it's not.
It's kind of like me. Who knew a marathon was so long, right?
My most is 10 miles, and so I'm going to go run a marathon during training.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we get a lot here in Texas is the heat.
Oh, yeah.
So I've always said this, and you're a medical person, and you know all this stuff, and you just tell me, but is that if you can train over the summer and hardcore train-ish, like it doesn't, but at least train quite a bit.
Yeah.
In October, November, December, in general, you're going to feel like you're just super speedy. Because I remember last year, I think it was, let's just call it year before, since it's 2025 now. Yeah. I ran 3 half marathons.
Nice.
And I struggled through. I paced one at 155, and I thought, I can barely get through this. It's 80 degrees and 100% humidity, and it's just only getting hotter from there.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I'm really out of shape. I wasn't out of shape. I actually ran a PR in September when I went to run it downhill. 128. So for me, it was like, okay, the summertime or heat acclimation is a good thing because it really just
Oh, for sure.
helps. You tell
Yeah.
me what you think about all that.
Man, we geek out about this topic and other topics so much. You're talking to the wrong person. We can talk about this for hours. But man, heat acclimation honestly is an incredible tool for runners or any endurance athletes. It's usually misunderstood or overlooked by recreational athletes. And
Yeah.
maybe another misconception I can add is when some people say, hey, I'm just not good at running in the heat, right?
Yeah.
I
Who is?
totally disagree with that. There's so much science behind it. If you're listening to this and you happen to be a Homo sapien, you can adapt to the heat.
Exactly.
Period. If you're a different species, I'm not sure, but as humans, we are have this remarkable ability to adapt to it. And it's not just about running in the heat, it's about training your body to perform under these stresses. So here's what happens if you want to talk about the nerdy stuff. Heat training increases your plasma volume. It decreases
Really?
your lower, so your blood is about 55% plasma volume, the liquid portion, and 45% other things like red blood cells and white blood cells and so forth. That portion of your blood actually goes up, the liquid portion of your blood. Your core body temperature drops down, which lowers your heart rate at a given effort. It improves your sweat response. And they don't only help you in the heat, like your example, they also help your body be more efficient even in cooler conditions. Yeah. You've heard the whole thing about heat training is like the poor man's altitude training.
Is that true? Or
we're talking about two different things. You're giving yourself a hypoxic stimuli when you're in high altitude and you're producing more red blood cells. This indirectly, according to Dr. Minson and so forth, what happens is your plasma volume will go up and you will produce more red blood cells. But we had Jeff Cunningham and he turned around and he said high altitude training is a rich man's heat acclimation training. But I mean, again, you got to do it, of course, in a very safe way.
you ever ran a mountain race? Been in Colorado or somewhere else and ran up? It is different. I remember going out, my wife and I went to Leadville and she ran the marathon, I ran the half. Of course, I've never done that long back then. And I remember just going up the stairs at this hotel and I couldn't breathe. I don't know what is going on. Yeah, I did all right during the race, but I thought I was in trouble.
Exactly.
But anyways,
yeah.
I digress a little.
No, but to your point, though, you want to bring a heat load in. Like Dr. Minson's protocol, it's so much time under heat. So in the wintertime, like it's cold right now, you might need to do passive heat, which is usually things like dry saunas and other ways of inducing heat to your body. But
or run indoors.
Run indoors with multiple layers. Yeah, if you can tolerate that, absolutely. But studies show post-work heat exposure can deliver many of the same benefits as running in hot conditions. So when you don't have access to the heat outside, that's one way of doing it. But you got to, of course, do it in a very safe way. Listen to your body. It's about adapting and not pushing through the danger zone and knowing some of the early signs of heat-related illnesses and so forth. But yeah, you've heard the story. As humans, they say we're perseverance hunters. We chase wild game in the hottest part of the day. That's our environmental niche. And we exhaust these animals. Where quadrupeds, four-legged animals, have to pant to cool off, we sweat. Yes. And no other animal sweats as efficiently as we do. Even horses, they sweat. There's these races between horse and man. And when it's above a certain degree Fahrenheit, the humans always win. So, yeah. We sweat, and horses do sweat, actually. They're just not as efficient as we are. But anyway, I would say heat training, especially, that's another reason why I love Dallas. The weather is so great here in the summertime. We get a lot of free...
A lot of heat.
We get a lot of free heat that people have to pay for. There you go. That's...
So let's get back to talking about you a little bit and I appreciate that insight. And I was just curious, you mentioned that one is you're running Boston coming up in April. Is this your first time, or have you done it before?
No, I'm obsessed with that race. I love that race. Yeah, no, I try to run it. The problem is Boston doesn't love me. It's always my slowest time. Last year I did 3:06 there. It was hot, though. It was a hot day.
Still pretty impressive.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I was pretty acclimated to the heat back then. Yeah, so it's very sunny. And the air temperature wasn't actually that bad. It was like 60 degrees, but that sun, man, that sun in Massachusetts just bakes you. There's not much leaf cover in April, and it will destroy you. So hopefully
how
this
many
year,
times have you gone?
3. Yeah.
Okay.
This will
be 3 or 4?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And then Tokyo will be my 5th star. I'm not again. Like I said, I got Tokyo coming up. I'll see if I want to race that or not. But I definitely will be racing Boston. Let's put it.
You know
way.
Andy? Andy, got his last name. He runs with the White Rock Co-op.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, is he going to Tokyo?
British guy. Yeah,
I know that. Yeah,
he's going.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, He's going to
Nice.
Tokyo. Then I don't think he's doing Boston. He already did Boston.
Okay.
When he goes to Tokyo, it'll be a seventh storm
7th.
or sixth.
Six,
My
six.
bad.
Okay. Gotcha. Awesome.
And he is trying to go to Australia for the seventh.
Actually, there are going to be more starts, so you're correct.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah.
Yeah.
This year is the seventh, is for Australia to be the seventh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome, man.
Do you have a goal in Boston this year?
Man, I don't know. I love to do a sub-3 in Boston soon. My goal in general for a marathon in the next year or so is a sub-250. We'll see if that happens. But
is your best 255?
255, yeah. It was, yeah. But I was going for a sub-250 then, so I wasn't. But yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it depends. It depends on the weather, depends on how you feel, depends on your training, depends on your mindset, honestly. Boston is a very tough race because it starts downhill and then first of all, like, it's such an exciting weekend. So you're not really getting much rest. Like, you're seeing all your friends and you're walking around, and then you take a bus to the start line. And then you're just waiting there. It's super exciting, but you're spending glycogen while you're waiting and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like the best perfect conditions. And then you run downhill, which your quads are destroyed.
And it starts at 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on when you...
10 a.m.
It's just later than a usual start.
Yeah, the elites, I think, start a little bit like 10, 15 minutes earlier. And then the first wave, the red wave, will start at 10 a.m. and then 10:15 or stuff like that. But then, your quads are destroyed, and then you get these massive hills. They're actually not that bad, but it's just such a, like from miles 17 to 21 or so, you get these rollers. They're pretty challenging. And then once you get to Boston Commons, if you get to Boston Commons and it's like mile 21, 21.5 or so, and you're still able to move your legs, it's going to be a good day. If you get there and you're destroyed, you're just gonna be so deflated. I did some of my training in Boston. I would go to Boston Commons and watch the Boston Marathon, and I remember, man, there's so much carnage at that spot right there because you have just finished. You've heard of Heartbreak Hill. It's actually not the worst hill, but then you get there, man. But I got to tell you, I love Boston. I'm obsessed with that. I don't know who said it. I think it was Emma Bates or someone said I'm obsessed with the Boston Marathon. So I'll steal her phrase. I will continue doing that race until they tell me I can't do it.
If you qualify, then you'll be good. And my wife, I'm very familiar with Boston. My wife's running 11 times, 12 in a row, right? And I don't run marathons much anymore. I did think about for my 50th this next year is maybe I'll run a marathon. I don't know. It's so much training, time, effort. For me, it's a lot. Yeah. But I love the atmosphere of the Boston Marathon. I get to go and run the 5K. They have 10,000 people just in the 5K on that Saturday, and elite runners in that 5K, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but
it's a good race, man. It's definitely the highlight of my running year.
Cool, man. That's really awesome. So as we wrap this up, is there anybody you wanted to thank or give kudos to or anything like that?
Oh, man, so many people. First of all, I got to give kudos to my kiddos, Parson and Arya, and my wife, Ellie, man. They put up with me. First of all, also just the running community here. I think you run with the White Rock group, man. There's such good...
DRC, White Rock. I've been
DRC, and the White Rock people, they're good people. DRC, man, I have a lot of affection for them. Matt Taylor's their main coach. He's my buddy. Janice and Laura, they're just such great people. The Pegasus people, I don't know if you run with them. Amazing people.
A couple of my guests do. I think it was not Aaron, but Travis, I think, runs with them a little bit.
Travis runs with them a little bit. He also runs with the Slots, which I run with.
Mimi Smith runs with them.
Mimi. Yeah, you've had the Mimi on the show. She's amazing. So the Pegasus folks, man, I love running with those guys.
Kind of the speedy
and
folks.
Girls. Some speedy folks. Their main coaches, Fonz and Jill, good people, man, all those guys. The Slots, man, that's just amazing. A core group of super fast Slots, like the animal, the mammal, the South African mammal, South American mammal. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's like the opposite, right? They're sloths. But
they're so fast. So fast, so friendly. Jennifer Pope, you should have her on the show. Matt Campbell.
Both of them. So
yeah, I can give you their contact information. Yeah, Matt Campbell, man, he's just an amazing guy, amazing runner. All my friends, Matt Barron and Jess and Jody and all these people, man, just so many people to name. Landon, Caitlin Moore, man, she's like such a good friend to me. I want to thank her. Just the list goes on, and I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of people. But man, just so many good running groups. Like I said, I personally think Dallas has the best running community out there. Just so many good people. You mentioned Mimi Smith. It's funny because you think about
how many running groups we have. I have this community called DFW Running Community, but I also have this website called dfwrunninggroup.com.
Yeah.
And I have this one of the highest kind of ranking pages that I have is running groups in my area. And I literally have 25 running groups on there. And I still don't have even close to all of them. There's probably 50. People are like, well, you forgot this one, you forgot that one. I was like, I don't know, man. I just can't keep up.
Yeah, there's definitely a decent amount. And the cool thing is there's different paces, different groups for different abilities and different goals. And there's some groups that are a little bit more social, more that are kind of performance-based. But yeah,
you can find one for whatever you're looking for. And that's the beauty.
So, for sure.
Monty, this has been really great. I really appreciate your time and hearing about your journey and just some of your expertise that we can give to the DFW running community and whoever else is listening. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. Please rate and review us and tell others about us. And Monty, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. My pleasure. Yeah, good job, man. Keep up the good work, man. Really keep spreading the message about DFW and the running community here. And I'll send you a bunch of people I think you should have on your show.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, my friend. Have a good one.